Dress rehearsal for life, ambition, self-mythology, and a check that carried the weight of the world. You know that you're a motivational speaker, right? She said. Her affectionate tone carried a tenderness, half joking that I tried to rationalize as merely polite. Sitting in the cafe, holding a short cup of cacao, unknowingly, she had struck the vein of a very old source rock in the story of my life, one that she probably didn't realize how far in the past it ran. I'm standing alone in the University Community Center basement classroom. Beige, brown, and black, tiled, dull, and lifeless walls enclose the space with a cast of around 18 empty chairs and tables. Overhead, a projector scatters light onto a white screen with a PowerPoint presentation reading "Expect the Unexpected" in black font on an orange background. Apparently, I failed the Introduction to Perfect PowerPoint Presentations 101 class. It's intensely quiet. Only the sound of my inner monologue and what I have to do holds next. It's around 7 p.m. in the evening. Not many students are here on campus voluntarily. It's the third time I've run through my speech, enunciating the words, accentuating the points and the tone. I practice my walk. I practice my pacing. I practice a confident grin and a pause held before I drop the next devastating idea. I try to assure myself that animations and reveals are on time for dramatic effect. Yet, I'm terrified. I can't tell you why on earth the undergraduate students at Richard Ivy's business school picked me to do a speech. As I inch my way towards the end, I slow down and add tentative heartbeats to the cadence of my words. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Preparing for the big ending. As I rattle off my conclusion and close the speech, I imagine a roaring applause and cheers. I try to feel some pride. I stop and take a sip of water. The timer reads just a few minutes under the cutoff time, and I resolve that I need to try it again to make sure it's right this time. My honest yet most hidden ambition in life was to be a motivational speaker. The vanity and hilarity of it aside, it's true. I even at one point attempted to, imitating a post-humanist mentor, Jim Rohn, write my own self-help book. The title of it was something like Developing Personal Magnetism and Charisma, as if I had any clue what those things meant at the ripe age of 20. I genuinely, despite insecurities surrounding personal confidence and esteem, imagined myself one day on a stage talking about how to live. That vision was the end-state performance of a life that I had rehearsed for over half a decade and forgot about for even longer. So what got in my way, and why did I forget about it in the end, after all? It all started with the basic problem of, what could a 20-year-old student attending one of Canada's lesser-known institutions, unremarkably so, really have to say about anything related to life? I needed a story, mission, and a life worth talking about first. The new face of entrepreneurship read the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. A bold, upfront, mocha-colored font in the magazine's iconic typography extended over a front spread photograph. A young, bright-looking gentleman with a grin. The image of my 19-year-old self stood arms folded, upright, and smiling in triumph. It was a mangled photo that I took with a selfie timer in my bedroom, poorly photoshopped onto the magazine cover. The printout hung on my dark green university bedroom wall so that I would see it, first thing when I awoke and the last thing when I went to bed. It was the early evening in the fall of a new school semester, where leaves fell from the trees and the feeling of open possibility held in the air. After a long walk home to my Richmond Street dwelling, my body felt tired and ready to sleep. But as I turned the door handle to my bedroom, I knew I had one more task to complete. The task always felt like a nuisance, but I knew that trading these 5 minutes ritualized every night would bring the oh so worth it to bring it all together in the end. I opened the side table hidden to the left of my bed. Inside, a secret Ziploc full of loose-leaf paper contained scribblings and markings in multiple ink colors. Next to the bag was a stack of single-sided blank paper, recycled from academic notes, a neatly cut collection of small strips measuring the size of 2 fingers. Climbing into bed, I selected a pen. Blue was the color of choice for this evening, then pulled the covers over me and angled my body awkwardly to write on the table surface. The secret of success. I could hear the voice of that cheerful everyman 1950s narrator echo in my thoughts. It was the voice from the start of Napoleon Hill's audiobook, Think and Grow Rich. I recalled the task the book had specified. Write down the precise amount of money you desire and the work for which you will do to acquire it. I wrote out the sum and the work I would do, autographing my name like a piece of memorabilia. Holding the paper still, I then visualized my future. before stuffing the signed affidavit to my future self into the trade secret plastic bag, my little repository of ambition, a secret reveal once I had made it. I shut the side table and felt a pang of doubt again. How exactly is this going to work? Brushing aside the doubt, I didn't know, but magnificent magic was my guess. Hill's book had made a compelling case that you think, you do, you get rich. To that transaction, at least, I did my part and my eyes closed to sleep. I'm fairly certain that the amount of money and the work I would do changed from week to week. Sometimes I wrote management consulting. Other times, computers and technology hit the page and the ink. Under the exceeding circumstances of limited imagination, I simply wrote business, then, like a dismissive child, shooed away the unfair test question. While drowsiness won over invention often, admittedly, I did not miss many recitals. But these magical life purpose statements really fed into a story that Photoshop magazine cover alluded towards. It was the story of my life, worth telling. It was a narrative I was trying to build on the coattails of two myths that I had held to be worth hearing. When Andrew Carnegie died, his estate found a scrap piece of paper in his desk from his youth. For the first half of my life, I will spend it making a fortune. For the second half of my life, I will spend it giving it all away. The image of a magnanimous character, lauded for his philanthropic claims, held strong in my imagination, though I borrowed it for less selfless aims. In sincerity, I did want to be a philanthropist and do good in the world. I still do believe it to be a high expression of virtue, and I was also probably partly motivated to follow Carnegie's plan for the authority to speak from the podium that it would give me. Yet, it was the second story that created a greater weight for me in the end. The image is of a young Jim Carrey, sitting alone in a car after striking out yet another audition. He decides to visualize a check for $10 million, telling himself that if he can cash a check that big, he made it. In his later Dumb and Dumber appearance, his dream came true. So, I decided to write myself a check. Well, several actually. My visualizations had been coming up short recently, so I set my sights on realism. After a series of self-negotiations, I bid my check value down, especially as doubts surmounted. Finally, it settled somewhere in the fantastically delusional range of $300 million, dated 2035. I had taken Rittenhouse's poem seriously. That folded promissory note occupied the same place in my wallet, tucked under a series of talismans and good luck charms for years, lugged persistently with a heaviness as the objective to meet. I buzzed myself into the cool corporate lab area. The early summertime heat had me sweating from a bike ride in. Corporate innovation was hip at the moment, so office furnishings were excessively modern. No fixed desks or chairs, stand-up tables for stand-ups, bar stools, and couches. Before entering another rehearsal in the Theater of Innovation, I slid devilishly into the accessibility bathroom on the right-hand side. Another 5 a.m. morning to a venture before work had me exhausted as I sighed and locked the door. My newly birthed dropshipping business was struggling under its lightweight and my impatience. The Shadacopia of AliExpress trinkets I marketed weren't selling, and only I was to blame. Sitting on the shower stool, the dark blue interior bath tile reflected my figure. As I stared at the promissory note between my thumbs, an intense doubt weighing on my shoulders. Bringing the check to my forehead, praying for things to go right, I whispered motivating things to myself in low sobs. Nobody answered. That 6 by 2.75 inch personal check weighed what I imagined the earth on Atlas's shoulders to be. A feeling of always on edge, intense urgency, and the need to prove myself to its persistent ticking sound. A reminder that time was passing by in the light of my self-conceived destiny. I needed to be an entrepreneur. But why? That wasn't a question to think about at this moment. What mattered was that I found the perfect startup idea and means to make the check real. Strangely, the truth was, I didn't believe any of this. I wanted to believe it. I rehearsed my performance continually, networking, searching for startup ideas, trying to seem smarter than I was, and yet the sentinel on my shoulder gnawed at me as if I had taken the wrong direction somewhere. That was doubt. I confidently tried to convince myself, but the eerie sense of being off track or misaligned held within me still. Affirmations, manifestation, fake it till you make it, but what's any of it about? Wrapped as it is in the reverence of metaphysical projection, visualization, my guess, is a tool that helps, just not in the way that self-help claims. The brain's default mode network is a powerful place, the repository of self-referential thought. In other words, the me, particularly our recurring beliefs. Visualization and affirmation aim to refactor our self-concept in ways that align to stated goals. In theory, a self-concept primed on a target gets better at noticing the events and openings already pointed that way. It's a subtle recalibration of cognitive focus that systematically alters what the default network registers as self-relevant, reshaping selective attention, risk tolerance, and daily micro-decisions. By training perception to recognize those openings hidden in plain sight, visualization turns itself into self-fulfilling prophecy. What you don't realize, however, the road to the visualization end might be a lot bumpier than you imagine. Please see the attached cease and desist. The email header froze the breath in my throat so cold that I might have been better off on Pluto. I stood paralyzed as a wave of dread ripped through me. My insides felt as if someone had turned on a buzzsaw and stabbed me with it about 12 times before deciding it was enough. The small app I taught myself to code had started getting some attention, and the C&D letter arrived a few months after launch and weeks leading up to my birthday. By this time, I had become enraptured in Silicon dreams, rehearsing daily affirmations aimed at one day going to the valley of industrial make-believe. As I panicked internally, trying not to hyperventilate, was this what success was supposed to feel like? I looked for help. The letter ended up being a minor bump, resolving without issue, but it gave me a first taste of terror that would come from big goals and business. For someone with grand ambitions, in that moment, I didn't feel like the one with the iron stomach for it. But it was also a success, at least, right? A few more trials and I would be on my way to the moment where that check gets cashed. V just looked at me through the video call screen for a second and asked point blank, usually when someone is a business owner or entrepreneur, there is a driving motivation to build or see something to be built in the world. What is that something to you? The question needled me as an honest inquiry does. I was here because there was something wrong with me. I've been rehearsing for years into the secrets of success business. Why couldn't I just get it together, go beast mode, and just deliver the grand performance already? I recalled my Photoshop feature on Entrepreneur magazine from years ago, how proud I wanted to feel to call myself an entrepreneur on LinkedIn. Cringy. But as I really started to turn over that question, I didn't have a deep reason. I just wanted to be free and respected. I don't really know. I just want to be an entrepreneur. It's always been there. I can't really remember where it came from, I replied. We had been working through the Enneagram as a personal development tool. My type, the 3 or achiever, had a particular backsliding tendency into image. As I sat on my neon green papasan chair, staring into the cyberspace built by the San Francisco transplants and beyond, V paused a moment and replied, "That sounds a bit vain, doesn't it?" I felt a hairline fracture to my ego crack wide open. Where did this ambition to entrepreneurship come from? I recalled the check and the intention to do good, but I could not remember its origins at this point. The type 3 is described as ambitious, competent, energetic, while equally status conscious and driven to advance, with the ultimate fear of worthlessness. At unhealthy levels, they try to impress through superiority, self-promotion, and making themselves sound better than they are. I knew how to do a lot of that, with the exception of maybe self-promotion, which, without my genuine interest, is usually my downfall. Sometimes 3s are even called the performer, as they lose touch with what they feel so as to conform to the image or desired persona as needed. The disconnect between my obsessive success rehearsals, self-conceived image, and the reality of my conceit was menacing. But this revelation had peeked open a small door to the rapid demolition that was to come on that same neon green chair a few months later. I'm sitting in my dim red mood-lit studio, my laptop in hand and the clock reading around 11 p.m., late December. The on-call rotation alarm has just notified me that something has gone wrong again. It was at the end of one full year of pandemic lockdown across the world while working for a hyper-growth company that provided me opportunities and stresses I never would have imagined taking on in my 20s. Working on systems responsible for millions of dollars and securing assets, my team had been undergoing a brutal trial of down systems and problems for the past several months. As I sat in that papasan chair during my holiday season, thousands of kilometers from my family, a few tears pooled in my eyes in front of the keyboard. I could not think straight. The application dashboard piled logs in with a cascade of new requests and errors. The screen flashed with computer text so quickly you could not catch a beat without interfering to make it stop. 2 messages tagged me in quick succession. At on call, can you take a look at this? Hey, at on call, errors on the system. Any advice here? Peeling my eyes from the pings, my phone suddenly burst again into that godforsaken robotic voice claiming another on-call alert. The pressure in my head was growing, and my face hot. I felt like I was being torn in two pieces. The skeleton crew running the holiday season only amplified the loneliness in this digital workspace. No one to call on, no one to lean on, just another alert and another issue to solve. And I was paralyzed. But it wasn't just the alerts that brought me to this point. It was that, on top of everything else. I was working in the world's most competitive city with some of the smartest people that I've ever met, in a global pandemic where crying in my storage closet on a casual Tuesday was normalized, and a persistent worldly chaos and escalating civil unrest led to a feeling of apocalyptic prophecy that even a few months earlier, San Francisco had experienced a plausible warning sign to the cataclysm as the city awoke to orange skies and dusk at 8 a.m. caused by wildfires. It was enough to convince anyone the world was at its end. Yet the most deafening screech came not from the sound of worldly foreclosure, but in the quiet, subtle ticks sounding the seconds fleeting by from my time-bound check. Despite all the projects, ventures, and attempts, nothing had worked. And here I was, trying to hold it together and believe. I looked at the software logs and felt an honest drop in my being, asking myself a question I had kept asking myself all these years up to that point. Can I handle this? This is the stone wall that I ground myself against for 7 years. The only baptismal truth I knew, having circulated and evangelized for it without rest in the church of success that I had built from the media I consumed, was to persist always, work harder, endure, discipline yourself, and never give up. If I quit on this thing, it would all come crashing down. I could lose almost every thread of faith, but so long as I had one in that dream, I could hold on for dear life, because that's how the magic of the secret of success worked. But truthfully, it was probably because I didn't know who I was without it, or more clearly, how I could be worthwhile without it. The studio apartment was quiet. The night sky held above the city, and the glimmer of lights sparkled around. By all measures, it was a serene night, yet the logs flooded into my screen now faster, and another message tagged me with, "Hey, at on-call, any update here?" I kept asking myself over and over again, what do I do? What do I do? I don't know what to do, and I have to handle this. While I wish this was a story of heroic triumph, it's not. After an agonizing negotiation, feeling my being split apart, I opened my messages and typed my manager's name. In a short and comically understated message, I tell my manager that I'm not doing so well, and I don't think I can complete the on-call. Finishing the draft, I read it over, uncertain fingers holding over the enter key carefully. The force of 0.65 newtons would be all that was needed in order to commit this act of personal self-destruction. All the nights, all the rehearsals, all the recitals, held in the hope and pushing against doubts, would be gone. My fingers shook as I felt the nausea and panic pour through me again. The voice in my head barked at me like a drill sergeant, promising menacing forms of corporal punishment if I chose to go through with this. If you can't handle this thing, you will never be an entrepreneur, period. The message sent, and within a few minutes, I was off call. While I ought to have felt relieved, something deep inside me had broken. It was the admission of real defeat and resignation. I did the one thing you're never supposed to do. I quit. I didn't feel much, just a sense of profound shock, shame, and numbness. Words were not really forming in my thoughts, let alone able to be spoken out loud. I closed the laptop and put it down on the floor, stepped cautiously to the front hallway next to my bathroom. Inside the key bowl, I saw and held my small black leather wallet. Opening its soft texture, I sifted my finger into the hidden pocket to find a 4-way folded personal check. I scanned the payee name, the sum, the memo, signed with black in the red atmosphere, feeling the weight of time, emotion, and cost held, and tore it in two, scattering the pieces. Sitting back on my papasan chair, I didn't speak or open my laptop, just the soft, moody glow, low hum of my open exposed red lamp, and I stared into the room. The next day, I went for a morning run and listened to Wake Me Up by Tim Bergling, also known as Avicii, the once ambitious musician driven by an unrelenting tour schedule that tragically passed at the age of 28. In this song, I heard the story of someone who had gone to sleep in the process of working towards the success they wanted, which at times was so overwhelming, they wished themselves to be asleep until it was just over and they had arrived where they were supposed to be. I heard Avicii's tragic story quietly underneath the pop sensation, and a recognition of my own that I didn't know I was lost either. My story was a dress rehearsal for a life I hoped would one day be worth talking about. A performance I kept waiting for the permission to give, waiting for someone else's authority that never came. Throughout all the recitals, I lost track of what I was even practicing for. An actor so consumed by the role that he forgets what the role was for, whether he was even enjoying the part or whether he wandered onto the wrong stage entirely. The revelation was hidden under a 1 gram personal check, signed and payable to myself, for the sale of a company I thought I'd build one day. I never would have imagined it would weigh that much. I didn't realize yet how insane the situation around me actually was, and I thought the problem was just me. The strange part is, I still rehearse, write daily affirmations, and even visualize from time to time. 50 Cent's The Hustler's Ambition is still one of my favorite rap tracks. One final lesson I got from V, the one I still have not integrated into my life after all these years, was, what if the big stage isn't the stage meant for me? I'd spent so long fixating on the big stage, but maybe there is a smaller, humbler side stage where I'm better suited. I paused a moment, and then I turned back to her. The same cup of cacao between us now, and back to the desserts on the table. The afternoon sun had set on the Thai island, with the day turning into night. My oversized fisherman pants adorned, barefoot sitting on accent pillows in front of the small coffee table. The image of a self-assured, half-smiling student hell-bent on a place in the world was replaced by the sincere, goofy smile of an older man now, without a job, purpose, or any clue what he was doing in life. My voice shook as I tried to reply. Ha, you think so? You know, it's funny you say that.